חסדים ומכל האמת.
My parents were members from the very beginning of the shul, so that was in 1956, and I was born in 1959. They had actually been members of the synagogue that Ner Tamid had been formed from, which was called, I think it was called Lubavitch, something. It was commonly known as the Quantico Avenue Shul. That's how it was on Quantico Avenue down in Baltimore City near Druid Hill Park. And a number of the families from there were moving out to the suburbs, and that's how Ner Tamid was formed. My parents' case, they had been renting a row house on Quantico Avenue, and they had enough money to buy a single-family home. People were moving out here. I don't think really the neighborhood around there had started to really change over as it did maybe 10 years later, but a number of families were moving further out to have single-family homes with lots and all. And so one of the neighborhoods that was being built was Summit Park, which is just over the city line. And my parents had put down a deposit on a house there. I think the total selling price was $17,000 at the time for a 3-bedroom house with a quarter-acre lot. It was actually not very developed. From what I remember, which one of my earliest memories from when I was 3 or 4 years old, for instance, the Greenspring shopping center that's nearby was still an airport, or airplane hangar and maintenance facility that Bendix Aircraft Corporation ran. Pickwick development had not been built yet. The Summit Park and the Meadowwood development had been built. And in fact, the synagogue was supposed to originally be at the corner of Pimlico and Smith Avenue, where now the Royal Farm Store is. And apparently, from what I recall my father telling me and others, that there was an Army Reserve base or something in that area that the shul members were trying to buy the land from, that they were moving out of. There's some kind of government thing, but they couldn't get that land, so that's why they ended up buying or getting the land here on Lincoln Avenue. So that's why when my parents bought the house in Summit Park, they thought they were going to be a lot closer to the synagogue than they ended up being. It ended up being about a mile walk when it was supposed to be only about 3 blocks. The earliest I remember it was when I don't remember the cottage or the house that they originally started in. I remember this building, but it wasn't as big as it is now. It pretty much only contained this sanctuary area, and the social hall was finished, I think, in around 1964, 65. This is around the earliest memories that I have. And then the Hebrew school wing was a little later than that. I do remember when that was being built and when it was finished. And that they refurbished the synagogue, the sanctuary area, 2 or 3 times since I've been a member. Of course, the Torah reading desk was also up here at the front bima in the beginning. There wasn't that cutout for it. So there was always, from what I can remember, a microphone for the rabbi here at the, when bima, or where he would give his sermons. But there was also a pair of microphones on the reading desk, one that was inside the Aron Kodesh and one where the rabbi sat during over there, so that when he would be giving out like page numbers or something, he'd just lean over into the microphone and give it. So it was considered okay as long as you turned on the microphone system before Shabbos and didn't turn it off until after. Then it wasn't until, and of course, when the high holiday services would come around, they would, once the social hall was built and we had all that extra room, it was not uncommon for both the main sanctuary and the social hall to be completely filled, over 1,000 people for the high holidays. And then there would be, you would really need to have a microphone to hear somebody from here up to the back, because the acoustics aren't really all that good here. It was eliminated for the regular Shabbat services probably about 10 years ago, and then for high holidays a couple of years after that. Children like my age would be reading, for instance, the Ashrei prayer. And we would have boys and girls do it, where the boys would do the Hebrew and the girls would do the English, and they would be from the women's section. So there would be that part of it. Again, Rabbi Leibowitz was, shall we say, famous or notorious for long sermons. His typical one would be 25, 30 minutes, and often, more than once, went close to an hour for the sermon. He was quite the speaker. I know that was one of the things that I used to do as a child, if I was here, was be to time him how long this week, Rabbi Leibowitz was very well respected, and it was one of the things that people actually came for. Was, in fact, I know that in the case of my mom, she used to make it a point just to get here in time for the sermon, to hear what it was. And I think that was, people, for the most part, I mean, there were complaints about it, of course, for having it so long, but for the most part, they recognized he was quite a scholar, and he also had a very nice, a good way of speaking. Maybe it was because he was Canadian, and so he had I wouldn't say an accent, but he spoke very well. And that it was many times pretty intellectually deep. But during the 70s and early 80s, he made a very big point about Soviet Jewry. In fact, he added a prayer for the end of services that was in the back of a lot of the prayer books that he composed to specifically as a prayer for Soviet Jewry. But I don't recall. End of services, he would, before saying the Kiddush to have everybody go out, he also gave a benediction that was in English and would be, it was always the same 3 or 4 sentences. It wasn't that, I mean, there were different ones, but there were only like 3 different ones that he would rotate through. I do recall one of them. It was, he who called every generation from the beginning, seek the people that seeketh thee. And then he would go into the Kiddush.